Hello and welcome to D20 Woodworking. Today we are going to answer the question I get the most, which is which LCG should I buy? Now, the reason I'm coming with this video is not because I think I have all the answers or anything like that, but it's because I've played all three. I played a lot of them. I've played pretty much everything that's come out for these games. And I also wanted to address one of the biggest um, things that is said about this on the internet that I disagree with, which when people ask this on Reddit or they ask this on Facebook or BGG, the common answer they get is pick the one whose IP interests you more. Now, I get why people say this, right? I don't necessarily completely disagree with it, but I think when you say something like that, it makes the assumption that all three LCGs play roughly the same. That you're just, like you said, picking the IP that interests you more. And I don't think they are. I think they each have their strengths and their weaknesses. I think some are really good at certain things and really bad at other things. So we're going to break that down a little bit. What I'm going to do is spoil my own video, and I'm going to do a too long didn't watch recap right away, and then we'll dive into each one a little bit more. But I wanted to put just kind of right out there in the beginning what it is, so that if you didn't want to watch this whole video and just skip to the end, you don't have to, right? But before I do that, do me a huge favor. Scroll down just a little bit, hit the like button, hit subscribe, leave a comment. It really helps me out. Let me know what your thoughts are. What LCGs are best for beginners, or what you would recommend to people, or maybe you think my list is good, maybe you think I'm wrong. Let me know down in the comments. I would greatly appreciate hearing that. All right, so let's jump straight into the too long didn't watch your video D20. So, if somebody asked me this to my face, oh, which LCG should you buy? I would ask, well, do you want to play a narrative story game, right? Do you want multiple branching paths? Do you want exploration? Do you want different endings, right? Do you like the idea of deck building, but you don't want to go too over the top with it, right? You want a simpler deck building option. If this is the case, I'm going to recommend Arkham Horror. The narrative story in Arkham Horror, I think, is the absolute best. I think it does it better than anything else out there for LCGs. I think the deck building can be challenging, and there's a decent curve to it, but I don't think it's over the top. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think it's not easy, but it's good. And every time I finish an Arkham Horror cycle, I want to start it right over again, because I know there are different endings and there's different paths, and I want to see what those are. And this LCG does that better than any other one. So if you were to answer yes to all those questions, this is what I would recommend to you. Now, let's say you're more interested in pick up and go game, right? Kind of the opposite of Arkham Horror. Arkham Horror is a very campaign-based game, and you don't want that. You just want to pick a good guy, and you just want to face a bad guy or a bad scenario. You don't want to worry about deck building too much. The campaign stuff sounds fine, but it's nothing great, whatever. I would recommend Marvel Champions. I recommend Marvel Champions for that, because can you play Marvel Champions campaign? Absolutely. If you never play it, are you missing a ton of the game? Not really. I usually play through a campaign once or twice, and then I very rarely play it again unless I make a concerted effort to really do it. But for the most part, I just pick a villain I like and I pick a hero I like. The hero already has 15 cards to start your deck with, so you know the basics of your deck to begin with. Then you decide from there, well, do I want attack? Do I want defense? Do I want thwarting ability? Do I want to have a bunch of allies out there? Well, there you go. You just pick which aspect you want, and then you pick cards from that aspect and build out from there. Now, the game is getting further along, so there is more cards. So the deck building is starting to get a little more complicated. But when it comes to just pick up and play, I think it's the best at that. I know a lot of people that just don't want to go through campaigns, right? Taking time with campaigns can take a lot of time, and I think if you don't really see yourself doing that, I think this is the best option for you to go. Now, let's say one of the things that you're most interested in is deck building, right? You don't really want your hand held for deck building. You want to see how deep into it you can go. You want to play a campaign, but you don't want multiple endings. Like, it's nice to go through a campaign, but multiple endings and branching paths, they don't really matter to you, right? You want the feeling of slowly building out an army, right? Building out great warriors, or building out your heroes or whatever. You want that feeling of, that momentous shift when you go from pretty much nothing to this massive card table with cards everywhere, and that feeling of just being able to more or less dominate your enemies if you're doing it correctly. And you want something that's harder than the rest. You're looking for difficulty, right? You want the game to be difficult. I recommend Lord of the Rings. I think Lord of the Rings is the absolute best at this. I think the idea of starting with your 3 heroes, having them gain resources so you're not throwing away cards, right? You're drawing cards slowly and you're going through it, and then you're building out your army and you're building out your heroes to make them even stronger, right? And then playing it through a campaign, and it tells a pretty good story for the most part. Now, again, it's not multiple endings or anything like that because the story is important, but it's not the most, right? You want a challenging game. You want a game that is truly going to push the limits of gameplay, but also deck building, right? Because let's be honest, these LCGs, there's a lot of deck building to it, and that is one of the big features of those games. If these are the things that you're really into, I would absolutely recommend Lord of the Rings. So, with that being said, that's my too long didn't watch. That's what I recommend to people, but do you want a little more detail on each one of what my thoughts and feelings are about each one? Stay tuned. We will get into all of that. We'll go right back to Arkham, Marvel Champions, Lord of the Rings. All right, so we did a quick review of each one, but I want to talk about it a little bit more because a lot of people ask about what to buy for each one, and I think this is a kind of a tricky thing to answer right now because of how 2 of these games are being reprinted, right? Or doing revised cores and all that stuff. So Arkham Horror, for example, you could still get the original 2-player core set. It's still something you can get. You can find it really cheap on sale, and it's what I have, or it's what I started with. Or you can get the revised core set, which is usually more expensive. A lot of people ask which should they get. Should they go the new route? Should they go the original route? Oh, it's tough. I'm not gonna lie, it's tough. The reason being is because it depends on where you are in your journey stage, I would say. So if you have absolutely nothing Arkham, absolutely nothing, probably get the revised core, right? Get the revised core. And actually what I recommend is not doing Edge of the Earth right away. I think that should be saved for later because it's a weird campaign, I think is the fairest thing I would say. So, for example, Dunwich Legacy and Carcosa, I think are the 2 best things to get right now, right? I think Dunwich is a fantastic starting campaign set for Arkham Horror. I think it did a really good job at that. Now that they have the reprinted version of it, there's a lot of content there for you. I think it's fantastic. Carcosa is another great cycle. I really enjoy Carcosa. I think it was a perfect follow-up. I would go right into that. Then at that point, if they haven't redone like Forgotten Age yet, maybe then you go into Edge of the Earth, right? Edge of the Earth to me is they want it to be what you play after you get the revised core. But I don't know if it's great for that. I'll be honest. The campaign's not my favorite. I think it could be a little long. I think it'd be a little drawn out. I think it's interesting what they're doing, and I'm happy. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy that they're trying different things. I will always be happy when they try different things. But as far as a follow-up to what the core box provides, I think you're best off going with Dunwich and then going Carcosa. And then if Forgotten Age hasn't come out by the time you do this, then work on Edge of the Earth. As far as the original stuff that came out, I assume they're redoing all of this, so I wouldn't get the original stuff. It's hard to track down some of those AP packs. It really is. Even with Innsmouth Conspiracy, which was the last one that did that kind of release model with, it was hard to find certain ones. So I wouldn't even bother with it. I would just keep waiting to see if they keep doing that. As far as the starter decks, I think they're fantastic. I would definitely recommend getting them probably after your first cycle. So if you do Dunwich, I would probably get the starter decks after that, then get Carcosa, but you can do Dunwich and Carcosa and then starter decks, right? You mix them in there wherever you feel like. And then the last thing is the return 2 boxes. I love them. I love the return 2 boxes. I like the cards that are in them. Not only does it make it a little bit harder generally, but usually it just changes up how the game plays. And I really like that. I really, really like that. Now, it's not going to do huge overhauls to the story, but to what you have to do in each scenario, it changes up a bit. And it changes enough to make it interesting and worth it, in my opinion. So that would be the very last thing I get, but I do recommend them. I think they are worth getting. All right, next up is Marvel Champions, and this is kind of hard to do, even though it's the newest one and there's not a revised core set yet. But the reason being is because it depends what kind of route you want to take. So obviously get the core box first. That's number one. Then past that, it's do you want more villains or do you want more heroes? If you want more villains, which is what I think you should go for, because you also get heroes with them generally, I would start with the campaign expansion boxes. As far as the order in which to get them, Rise of the Red Skull I think should be first. Not because it's the best per se, but I think the heroes are pretty decent, and I think the villains in them are good for a dealing with just like starting cards, right? You don't need a bunch of other cards really. I think if you just had those two boxes, you can work through that campaign box pretty well. You won't destroy it, but you'll do well enough. Past that, I'd probably go Mad Titan Shadow and Sinister Motives. Maybe you could do it the other way around, right? Sinister Motives and Mad Titan Shadow, but that's the order in which I would do things. The Galaxy's Most Wanted I'd almost save for like completely last. I like Groot and I like Rocket in it, but the villains are not great, in my opinion. It's a huge miss. I think that box as a whole was a huge complete miss. So if you go the villain route first, I would get those 3 expansion campaigns: Rise of Red Skull, Sinister Motive / Mad Titan Shadow. Save Galaxy's Most Wanted for later. Then I would start focusing on hero packs. So it kind of is whatever you want to do, which is a weird thing to say. I'll be completely honest. If you're playing pure solo, which is the way I mostly play, so it's what I'll recommend, I wouldn't worry about Hulk right away. You do want him eventually. There's good cards in there, but I wouldn't worry about him right away. Thor, I wouldn't worry about right away. And the rest, War Machine, I wouldn't worry about right away. Valkyrie, even though I like her a lot, I wouldn't worry about her right away. Even Nebula, I wouldn't worry about right away. But I would try to get like a Captain America pretty early on. Doctor Strange, obviously he's talked about as being the most overpowered hero. I still don't think that's the case. I think that's a slight exaggeration because I think he's the most straightforward hero, which I think is a completely different thing. I don't think he's the most powerful hero. I think he's the most straightforward hero. So if you want a very straightforward hero with how to play it right away, Doctor Strange is your man. Captain America, I think, is a fantastic hero pack to get. And then, past that, I think Gamora is pretty good. I think Drax is pretty good. I think Venom's pretty good. Then they kind of get past that. I like Ant-Man, Wasp. There's a bunch of different hero packs I like, but I would just work through them however you want to do it. I would just save Hulk and Thor probably for last. Not that they're bad. They're just not as good. Hulk especially. Thor has gotten pretty good, but you really need the Valkyrie cards as well to kind of really flesh them out. But yeah, that's kind of how I would approach the hero packs. Now, as of recording this, the 5th wave hero packs I don't have yet, right? Nova, Ironheart, Spider, and Spider-Ham. I don't have them yet, so I can't really recommend them yet. Then the other big thing that people talk about is the scenario packs. Green Goblin, Wrecking Crew, the Hood, and Once and Future Kang. Green Goblin should be the number 1 scenario pack you go for. I think it's fantastic. If you choose to get it early on, I think that's fine. I like playing Green Goblin a lot. I think he's a lot of fun. If you've played the game a lot and you're tired of the standard cards, I would get the Hood. I think that's one of the biggest things about him is he starts pushing modular sets and changing modular decks around. Early on, a lot of people don't like to play with other modular decks, right? They don't like to mix and match. The game wants you to do that, so do that. But I think the Hood is a great way to kind of push you in that direction. Kang, I think, is a lot of fun. I just think he's really, really tough on solo. And the Wrecking Crew is fine. It's nothing amazing. The biggest thing with the Wrecking Crew is it's kind of easy to figure out what to do against them. So as far as that, Wrecking Crew and the Galaxy's Most Wanted would probably be the last 2 things I would recommend. It's whichever you want to do. I'd probably do Galaxies first, then the Wrecking Crew. Probably even Galaxies before Kang, right? Just realistically, I think the value is there for Galaxies over Kang. So that's my recommendations for Marvel Champions. All right, last but not least is Lord of the Rings, and it's a tough one. And the reason it's tough is because as of right now, it appears they are not reprinting any of the original stuff, which normally wouldn't be a problem. But the problem is because of how these starter decks work, right? The dwarves, the elves, the Rohan and Gondor decks, they're most likely, we don't know for sure, but most likely not going to do the Shadows of Mirkwood cycle, Dwaro Dwelf cycle against the Shadow cycle and Ringmaker cycle. Most likely, we don't know for sure, they're not going to reprint them. And it kind of stinks because I like some of those cycles. I like Dwaro Dwelf. I don't mind against the Shadow. Ringmaker, take it or leave it, and Mordor or Mirkwood, take it or leave it. But the reason being is because a lot of the good hero cards are in those starter decks, so they don't really feel the need to reprint them. Now, again, they might do it down the road, right? When they run out of stuff to reprint, they might do it then. I get it for that. For Lord of the Rings, they're starting off with the Lost Realm, which it's gonna be tough. It's a tough cycle. It's a really tough cycle. I think this is gonna be a really tough game in general to recommend to people right now because they're not reprinting the original stuff. If they're reprinting the original stuff, I would tell people, get the new core box, start with the first cycle, work your way through, throw in the sagas whenever you feel like it. Right? Sagas you could probably beat pretty early on, but even the saga boxes, according to Fantasy Flight's website, are starting to go out of print. Right? They're just not printing anymore. It's not that it's out of stock, it's out of print. And this is something we're seeing come up more and more and more. So I've seen people try to chase down all the old stuff. That's what I have, is all the old stuff. And I get it, but if you fall short one pack, man, you're gonna be upset. I'm not gonna lie, you're gonna be upset, and I don't want to recommend that to people. But I'm really curious of what this new release cycle is gonna look like, because again, the Angmar Awakened cycle with the Dread Realm, excuse me, with Dread Realm and Battle of Karn Doom, I mean, they're tough cycles, or they're tough packs, and it's a tough cycle overall. So it's a very interesting decision to start with that one. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure they'll make the campaign a bit easier, but it's tough. And then most likely, I'm going to guess, we don't know for sure yet, that they will do Dream Chaser next. That's one of the most popular ones. They want you to start building up your card pool for it, and then who knows past there what they will do. And then hopefully they work in the sagas at some point. I assume they would. That would be an easy moneymaker. So once they do the sagas, definitely get into them. But as of right now, I think Lord of the Rings is just in a very difficult spot to recommend. I mean, I still recommend it. I think it's a very difficult spot for buying right now because we just don't know what is going to happen. We don't know what the next cycles are. We don't know a whole lot, and it kind of stinks. And the revised core box, like the first 3 scenarios in there, or the 3 scenarios in there, they're tough. One's really easy, one's pretty hard, one's almost impossible for solo. And they tried to lighten it up during the campaign thing, right, by adding extra cards, different things, and they do a decent job. It's not, but it's still tough. It's still really difficult, and it tends to be very off-putting to new people. And my biggest fear, I'll be completely honest, is that people get the box, then they get Angmar Awakened, and I don't know if the cards are good enough between just those 2 boxes to defeat all of Angmar. I really don't. Maybe I'm just not that good of a player, and I wouldn't be able to do it. And if you're good enough, you can do it. But we're looking at an expense now of $70 according to MSRP of the core box, $70 for the campaign box, plus you need the $45 for the hero expansions, and I'm going to guess you need the hero packs to do well, which is $22 a pop, which is $88. And I mean, we're talking about hundreds of dollars to invest into this game before it gets good and interesting. And that's why I really wish they would have focused on the rest of Shadows of Mirkwood. I think it was a huge miss by Fantasy Flight. I think they should have just finished out Shadows of Mirkwood. You didn't have to do the hero box. You could have just done the campaign box. Not that it's the most amazing campaign. It's probably one of the weakest. But again, after a core box that gives you a super easy scenario and then 2 really hard scenarios, it would have been nice to have some interesting different things and some easier campaigns. I think it was a miss. And I kind of worry a little bit about the reprint cycle strategy for this game. I hope it works. I want it to work. It's probably my favorite LCG out of all of them. But we'll see. We'll see where it is. So anyway, that's all my thoughts and takes. Once again, let me know your thoughts. Scroll down, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about each of these. Let me know what you think about what were to buy things. And let me know your thoughts about Lord of the Rings too. I'm kind of interested in that because I always like to hear people's takes on that. And then lastly, if you didn't, make sure you like and subscribe. Really helps me out. Greatly appreciate it. Take care, all.